Okay, so the second part of the Quake 2 monsters. I'd just like to say at this point that they're not necessarily in any order. I did cover some of the weaker enemies first, but there's a few here that are probably weaker than some of the others that I'd covered before, but that's just the order that they appeared on the Quake 2 Wikia. So let's go into part 2. So we've got Barracuda shark. Barracuda sharks are small, vicious, shark-like creatures appearing in Quake 2 and The Reckoning. They can only attack by biting, but as they are usually found in packs, they are quite dangerous. Barracuda shark will come at you fast, and they are often found in waterways, both inside and outside Strog facilities. So be extremely careful when entering any pool of water of reasonable depth. They often lurk close to the surface, so try to look out for their backs and tails poking out into the air and prepare your approach accordingly. As the name suggests, this threatening organism has the ability to awaken dead Strog from eternal sleep. This is the medic. In Quake 2, a medic is a centaur-like Strog with an ape-like posture that has a rapid-fire blaster for a right arm. It has the ability to revive any enemy in the game as long as its corpse is not gibbed. As soon as it sees a corpse, it'll make a beeline towards it. As it's reviving an enemy, the enemy will grow bright red. So yeah, this enemy is a lot more dangerous when there's lots of enemies in the area. It can revive the ones you've already killed, which is a bit of a pain, but it doesn't do it particularly quickly, and usually you can isolate and kill these pretty easily. So let's move on. So brains. The official Quake 2 manual says this: a vicious cyborg abomination with life-stealing tentacles protruding from its chest during attack. Quake 2 Brains is a strange Strog creature constructed from a grim mixture of human and mechanical body parts. I would say emphasis on mechanical. It has a small stereo camera in place of a head, 2 arm hooks, multiple hooked tentacles within its opening chest cavity, and a powerful energy shield that is able to absorb a lot of gunfire. However, perhaps as a result of the equipment it carries, or because of some unresolved flaw in its creation process, the Brains is by far the slowest enemy in the game, making it easy to avoid, outmaneuver, and dispatch. Brains start appearing in the factory hub and are a rare enemy throughout the rest of the hubs. Well, having played Quake 2 again fairly recently, I have to say I can't particularly remember this enemy, so obviously it's not particularly numerous in the game, and neither is it a particularly threatening enemy. Right, let's move on. So next we've got the Technician. The Quake 2 manual says the following: an almost completely robotic brute controlled by a brain that floats around inside its metal body in a red preserving fluid. So this looks quite similar to Krang from the Turtles, if you ever watched Turtles as a child. So in Quake 2, a Technician is a floating mechanoid comprised of 2 halves. The upper half is a transparent tube containing a head or brain floating in red liquid, cybernetically linked to a respirator and all of its other equipment. Its lower half is of course purely mechanical, comprising a weak blaster for range attacks and 2 claws for melee attacks. as well as 4 jets enabling its flotation. The technician has surprisingly high health, so make sure to break out your powerful weapons when you see one. So yeah, this is another fairly rare one. It is good to use a railgun against this one, as it says it's got quite good health, so you know your railgun will destroy it fast. So moving on, we're going to look at the Mutant. The only bit that the Quake 2 manual says apparently is comments. Run. Short but sweet, eh? I used to love those old manuals. Yeah, so I agree. This is a a flesh and blood type creature. It's a large grey creature that only uses melee attacks. It can pounce and slash you. It's notable for being one of only 3 known examples of native Strogos fauna, other than the Barracuda shark and the Gek. So, Strog heavily polluted. Yeah, so these again, they only appear in like certain levels. I do remember when I played the game, them having a fair bit of health, and they run about quite fast. But I think what you've got to do kind of is just keep moving and maybe try and get them blocked behind doors or arches. I also don't think that they can. I don't think they can go into water, so you're pretty much safe in water against these ones. Okay, so moving on, we've got the Flyer. The Flyer is a small 2-winged monster comprised of a controlling brain and a cyborg body that allows it to levitate. In Quake 2, a Flyer is a small, thin, flying cybernetic construct with a humanoid head. It has 2 rapid-fire blasters for ranged attacks and uses the blades mounted on its wings for melee attacks. Flyers first appear in Unit 1 and continue to appear fairly often throughout the rest of the game. Rarely, flyers have been known to aid technicians, which happens in exactly 1 level. Yeah, so these things can be a bit of a pain in terms of Quake 2 not really having, if you haven't got like an autofocus, sometimes I remember it being tricky to target these things, which is probably what the developers were going for. But generally they're not very powerful, and they explode fairly quickly, so not really a major threat unless they're in a very large group. Okay, so the next enemy is Icarus. I think Icarus was a flying man in Greek myths, and this one flies also. So from the Quake 2 manual it says, relies on a huge jetpack attached to its back with laser blasters mounted onto its shoulders. In Quake 2, an Icarus is a humanoid Strog with a jetpack built on its upper back with 2 blasters mounted onto its shoulders. Whilst it's only ever seen in flight, it does have legs, which is suggestive of a need to land on a regular basis, probably to refuel, rearm, and take some Stroyant. I guess Stroyant is the Quake 2 equivalent of ecstasy or amphetamine, ketamine perhaps. Icarus are essentially flyers but with much higher health and without a melee attack. Icarus first appeared in the prison hub and are an uncommon enemy throughout the rest of the game.